What was your oh shit my life is over my parents are gonna kill me moment you had as a child/teen? For a month I kept taking the internet cord from my parents' room and running it to the living room, plugging it in the TV box. I was washing the dishes when my dad started reading out the corn titles on the bill. Me and a few buddies got arrested for some very foolish and regrettable criminal mischief. We managed to keep it from our parents by getting to the mailbox first to destroy court notices and targeted letters from lawyers. We thought we were in the clear too, until the newspaper article with our names in it came out. The 5 seconds between my mum catching me smoking and actually speaking back when I was 14. There was a small lizard trapped in our garage under a pile of wood, so I moved some of them so it could get out. I must have accidentally knocked over a larger plank in the process. That landed on my dad's car and went straight through the windshield. Lizard was fine though. I thought it was a good idea to play with some candles while having a relotia marathon. Turns out that was a bad idea because I ended up getting distracted and set the family couch on fire. I frantically put it out and threw a blanket over it. I didn't leave that couch for a week. I was 10 years old, only pretending to drive a car with my friend in the back seat. I knew not to touch the ignition or the gearbox, so the car is parked on an incline. I lowered the handbrake and the car starts to roll backwards, moving steadily and with increasing momentum towards a concrete wall. Thankfully I knew which one the brake was, so I pressed down on it with all my might and told my friend to get out of the car and call my dad, all the while pressing down on that brake. I thought, yep, today I either die or my dad kills me. I live to tell the tale. Getting drunk at the age of 14 at a house party. My mum met me a few minutes walk away. She could hear my ridiculously drunk self the entire walk. When I was in 3rd grade I brought my brand new Beyblade to school to show to one of my friends. During part period I carried it with me in my pocket because there was this stupid rumor about surprise bag checks when children aren't in the classroom. Guy behind me in the line saw it and told the part teacher. The Beyblade was confiscated. I tried to act cool in front of the other kids, but I was shit scared that my parents would find out. After going home I pretended to search for my Beyblade everywhere so that my mom would think that it got lost. My elder brother was in the same school and it scared me even more that someone from my class would tell him about this. Our family moved to a different place and we moved to a different school the following year. So to this day nobody knows. Now I'm 21 and this story makes me laugh every time I think about it. Edit. Beyblade not Beyblade. Sorry. My mom caught me smoking pot and she called the cops and had me arrested for possession. I was only 15. I was incarcerated at 15 years old and she wonders why I don't talk to her anymore. My sister locked me out of the house. She was still inside. So I went around banging on all the doors and she's ignoring me. I started pounding on her bedroom window and my hand accidentally goes through the window. Over 10 years later and I still have a tiny scar on my hand. My parents had just left for vacation. I got pulled over doing 85 in a 45. The cop didn't write me a ticket, but gave me his phone number and told me to have my parents call him by 6 PM. He told me if he did not get a call, he was going to issue a warrant for my arrest. Mind you, this was before cell phones were very reliable. I left a message with the receptionist at their hotel letting them know they needed to call home as soon as they checked in and that it was an emergency. The cop told them that there was no way he could write me a ticket that didn't result in me losing my license. And being that I was just a dumb young kid being dumb, he didn't want to do that. He instructed them to put the fear of God in me and he would put the matter behind him. Needless to say, it was not my finest moment as a son. I didn't put the chicken out the freezer while my mom was pulling up. Had my 15 boyfriend 18 over while my dad wasn't home. Went to a friend's house and got drunk. My boyfriend was drunk, so I put him to sleep in my bed. Went downstairs to clean up the house and fell asleep on the couch in my underwear due to Noah/C. Woke up to my dad standing over me and looking at an empty 26er of vodka on the table. I told him it gets worse. I run upstairs and wake up my BF and tell him my dad is home. He jumps out of bed runs down the stairs and out the front door. I can't believe I lived to see another day after that. Was driving home early in the morning after a night of playing games at a friend's. I was going too fast on an icy road, lost control of my car, and ended up 40 yards into an icy, flooded field. Car filled with water. I was 16 and had gotten my license just a couple months earlier. Parents were actually pretty cool about it. The car recovered, but always had a smell after that. Parents were away for the weekend. I took my dad's keys and took it for a small drive. I was never allowed to drive unsupervised. Didn't have a license or anything. Was a thrill. I came back, parked, left the keys in the same drawer he left them in. Monday arrives. I come back from school and my dad asks me to come look at the car. With a death glare. I had forgot to pull the seat back after adjusting them for my 14-year-old legs. I put my cheap gel pens in a microwave when I was 11 because they wouldn't work, and my teacher told me that it's because the ink has frozen. Let's say I had to work extra that summer so I could get a new microwave. Getting pulled over by 3 police cars for doing 70 in a 45. My dad happened to call as I was talking with the officers. They asked to speak with him. After a few minimum they handed the phone back and said, "You better go home. That is going to be worse than the ticket we are giving you." That was a whole lot of yelling at home. I once locked my mum's car keys inside her car while she was at work once. I was opening the boot of the car and I was going to go into the car afterwards. So I threw the keys into the car, shut the boot, and went to open the car door. It was locked. The keys were inside. My mum had to break the back window of the car to get in to retrieve the keys, and had to drive around with a beanbag taped over the window for like a month. Edit. She could have called someone to fix the lock, but she needed to use a car to drive to her next job and didn't have time to wait for a call out. Also, she probably never considered it anyway. It was a warm spring day. We were juniors, and so a bunch us cut school to swim and drink beer at the beach. So I ran into a girl I hardly knew, and after a couple of bottles of beer, I asked her if she wanted to go home with me, since my folks were at work and my siblings were at school. So we went to my house, and we had sex. So she's getting dressed in the bathroom, and who should walk in on her but my mother, who had taken a mental health day from work. Funny now, not funny at all to my pious Catholic mom. It took months for everything to calm down. When I was an adult, my father was like, "Why the hell did you have drag mom into it? Why didn't you check the house first?" But I did it. And in 1962, that was something. And it was a long time before I had sex again. Was texting my brother asking for help with something so that my mom wouldn't get mad. Called her a bitch in the text. Sent it to my mom. When I was 16 I was going through this emo/punk phase and I decided one day that I wanted to put colored streaks in my hair. So I went to Walgreens and bought this semi-permanent red dye for dark hair because I had no idea how to bleach my hair. I get home, apply the dye, and think I'm going to look so awesome that it'll be worth it if my parents get pissed. I had no idea what I was doing, and instead of ending up with red streaks thought my hair, I ended up with a huge red splotch at the top of my head because all dye clumped together or something. It looked terrible and was no longer worth getting in trouble for. The next morning I see my mom and she takes one look at my hair and bursts into laughter and tells me, "Wow, you really ducked that up, didn't you?" She wasn't mad. She thought it was hilarious, and after a bit of teasing she went to Walgreens and got me a box of black hair dye so I could cover it up and not have to go outside looking like that. I was 17. Drove my girlfriend home from school. We ended up in the shower together. Just as we turned off the water and she was stepping out, we hear her dad open the front door of the house. Of course my truck is in the driveway, so he knows I'm there, but I'm nowhere else in the house obviously. My short life flashed before my eyes. He came stomping down the hallway and banged on the bathroom door. My girlfriend, wrapped in a towel, answered the door and lied her grass off. Spanks is down the street at one of our friends' house. I told him I'd call when I was out of the shower. Meanwhile, I'm standing frozen and shriveled in the shower behind the curtain preparing to meet the hereafter. Married that girl. Been together 26 years. Edit. Obligatory gold thanks. Lol. This blew up. I also replied to a few questions below, including how I got out of the predicament. Also, my wife is a preacher's kid. Her dad was one of my 2 pastors growing up. Parents heard that my girlfriend was pregnant. She wasn't. From mutual friends of Thiz and my girlfriend's parents. Dad and I had a long talk. Edit. My girlfriend thought she was pregnant. She told her parents. They told a friend. The friend to my parents. Dad told me. Edit 2. This was in 1979. When I was about 8, my sister, 10, and I used to play around the neighborhood with other kids. But we had to be home by 8 p.m. or when the street lights came on. Whichever came first. We had a watch on, and every evening my mum would make sure that we had one with us, and it was working. One evening we were 20 minutes late, and it was the second time that week. If we were late twice in a week, we weren't allowed to go out the rest of the week. My sister and I were talking by the back garden gate, making up excuses why we were late and making sure we were both on the same page in case she questioned us. We opened the gate to go inside, and my mum was standing on the other side of the gate, arms folded. That was a life flashed before my eyes moment. My parents paid for my mobile phone subscription, got a girlfriend, and called a lot more. Too much more. Raked up a €600 bill. My soul left my body that day. In our single digits. My older brother locked me out of the house while parents were out. I threw a stick at the back door and shattered the storm door glass. Knew I was gonna get a licking, but my bro got the licking instead for locking me out. He was a real jerk to me as a kid, and we are in our 50s now, but he still brings up how guilty he feels for it. That kinda makes up for how much I despised him back then. One time I snuck out of the house, and when I went to sneak back and the door was locked. We never locked the doors to the house, so I knew I'd been caught. Lived on a farm, so I just went up to the hay loft to sleep the rest of the night. 17 years old. Had a party while the parents were out of town. I had to work the next day, but timed it so I would have plenty of time to clean before they got home that evening. Came home from work. The sprinklers are on and their car is in the driveway. Driving down my driveway, I was anxiety and fear personified. I walk in the house and my mom tells me, "Your dad had to leave before you got here, otherwise he was afraid of what he might do to you." When I came home to tell them that my girlfriend was pregnant for Thanksgiving of my freshman year of college. I had just gotten my first ever job at Ace Hardware, and a week in, my buddies hit me up asking if I wanted to head to the beach for next week, and I was like, yeah, of course. So I told my boss at work a family member died and I couldn't come in the next week. So my boss called my dad, who also works for the owner of the company in a different department, and starts telling him, "I'm so sorry for your loss, please let me know if I can do anything to help." And my dad was like, "What do you mean? What happened?" And he ended up telling my boss I lied about the entire thing. I still got the week off and went on the vacation, but the next few days at my job were nerve-wracking to say the least. I broke an old iPod when I was like 5, and I thought it was like thousands of dollars to fix, so I just sat there crying. Edit. Damn, this is the first time I ever got more than like 10 karma on a comment. Thank you guys. Was playing with gasoline and caught my pants on fire. My parents are from Eastern Europe and my dad does not spare the rod. So, there I am with first 3rd degree burns on my left leg, and about an hour passed since the initial incident happened before I even thought about telling him. Adrenaline is one hell of compensatory mechanism. So we live in it, a story colonial. My parents are away on vacation. I'm in the yard and tossing a baseball up in the air and catching it. Just a 9-year-old entertaining myself. I think to myself, hey, let's loft it onto the first split level roof and then it'll roll off and I'll catch it. Second toss. Crash. Shatter sister's window. Grandma was babysitting. Grandma reported I was smoked. I snuck out and took the car when I was 16 before I had a license to drive at night. I hit a pothole and blew a tire. I rode around on a shredded tire for 2 to 3 minutes before I drove up on a guy smoking a cigarette in his driveway. He helped me change it. The next morning my parents woke up early and were going to take the car somewhere, and the spare was still on. Luckily this was right when the Goodyear or Firestone tires were all blowing out, and I told my parents that it happened earlier in the day before, and I just didn't have a chance to tell them. I skipped school by leaving the house, climbing on the garage, and waiting for my mum to leave. I jumped down to let myself in as she drove off, and set myself up for a day on my PS1. She then came back as she'd forgotten something, and I wanted to die in a hole. The yelling was something to behold. Didn't do that again. When I was 11 I wanted s'mores, and I was home alone. I went out back and made what I thought was a safe little fire surrounded by rocks. Wrong. Ultimately, the embers caught some leaves under my parents' deck on fire, and I watched in abject horror as their house went up in the biggest motherfucking flames I'd ever seen. They were loving and supportive after finding out I was alive, but certainly less than thrilled at my idiocy. Ninja Reddit. Always have tucking homeowners insurance, folks, if you own a home. Especially with kids. Particularly with accident prone ones. And no, this was the last catastrophe I caused. Shinobi Ninja Reddit. Thanks for the silver. I was also on Judge Judy a number of years later. Dad was less than pleased about that too. But that's a tale for another time. Lol. When I was 6, I spilled grape juice on the tan carpet in the living room. I put a pillow over it, laid on the pillow, and vowed that I would stay there the rest of my life, so my parents would never find out. I lasted about 45 minutes. My mom was more upset that I got grape juice on the pillow rather than the carpet.